This story begins at Angel University. One of the students is a pretty girl in a skirt named Sanchu. She calls someone an idiot for coming to pick her up. The person who came to pick her up is her brother-in-law, Kingi. Leaving the car, she says she feels embarrassed that he came to get her. And as she walks to the vehicle, she calls him useless and throws her bag at his legs. Kemi grabs the bag and she opens the car door. Seton asks him to hurry up because she doesn't want any of her classmates to see them together. She tells her brother-in-law that he shouldn't pick her up at the entrance of the university again because it embarrasses her. She even comments that she doesn't understand how her sister ended up marrying someone like him. While driving, Kin is very nervous, his hands trembling as he grips the steering wheel tightly. At the end of the day, they arrive at the Chu family residence, a large mansion. Inside the house, Mrs. Chu is praising a young man named Minal, who mentions that he studied abroad. She comments that Keenan should have married him and not Kingi. Minal asks about Keenan, saying he hasn't seen her yet, and Mrs. Chu replies that she's working and hasn't returned yet. He then asks about Keenan's husband and comments that he heard he is unemployed because he can't speak. Mrs. Chu explains that Kinley went to pick up her youngest daughter. The mother-in-law asks Kinley to come downstairs to greet the guests, saying he shouldn't lock himself in the room. Keeney grabs the girl but doesn't speak to anyone, heading straight to his room. At this moment, Sit calls out, asking if he's deaf because he didn't hear his mother calling him. While complaining about her brother-in-law, she asks if he thinks the house is his and begins entering his room. He is in his underwear, meditating and emitting a large amount of energy as if it were a kind of fire. The girl, embarrassed, tells him to get dressed, calling him a pervert. But Kinley pays her no attention as the energy is flowing within him. The meditation provides him with more energy that he absorbs from the plants and other things around him. He slowly opens his eyes to see what's happening and observes a large vortex of energy. This is a technique he has trained for 10 years, and part of his training required him to remain silent to focus. After a decade of silence, Kinley finally manages to control the large sphere of energy in his hand. He reflects a little on his past, remembering that it has been a year since he became part of the Chu family but hasn't spoken a word yet. When he tries to speak, his jaw feels stiff. He warms up his voice a bit, as if something in his throat is loosening. Proud of having achieved what he wanted for so long, he feels he doesn't need to suffer anymore and can speak again. Suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by a loud scream ordering him to come downstairs quickly. His mother-in-law continues calling until Kin gets dressed and goes down to the hall. The plant that received his energy starts showing something strange. Almost dead, it quickly blossoms and comes to life, displaying new leaves. When Kin goes to the hall, his mother-in-law asks herself aloud if, besides being mute, he's also deaf. There, he comes face to face with his wife's old friend, who is also her suitor. This friend introduces himself as Mineo. Seeing Kinley, he shows a malicious expression as if plotting something. Kinley remains silent and greets Mineo. However, when shaking his hand, Mineo begins to mock him, saying that besides being a fool, Kai also needs his wife to speak for him. The former suitor continues, saying that Kimmy only married because of his wife's family fortune. With eyes full of anger and malice, he claims that Kimmy doesn't deserve Kainan and offers a large sum of money for him to lead. Upon saying this, Minmaneo is suddenly hit by intense pain, which makes him jump in fear and show a horrified expression. Kimmy was squeezing his hand so hard that he almost broke his fingers. With a calm expression, Kim asks what's going on and introduces himself as Kin. His mother-in-law and sister-in-law are very surprised because it's the first time he has spoken in 10 years. They ask if he really said something. His wife's friend Min becomes very nervous and asks if Kimmy can speak, pretending ignorance. Kimmy asks how he's not ashamed of lying to his wife for so many years, while continuing to squeeze his hand. His mother-in-law, very nervous, begs him to let go, saying he's hurting the other man. Kin's sister-in-law is extremely scared by the whole situation. At that moment, Satan's phone rings and she looks at the screen with concern. When she answers, she receives shocking news that leaves her frightened. The police want to arrest her sister and are at the company where Keenan works. Keene hears this, approaches the phone, grabs the sister-in-law's hand, and asks what happened to Keenan, his wife. The sister-in-law replies that something happened with her sister and that the police plan to take her. Determined to intervene, Keene turns with confidence, but his mother-in-law shouts for him to return to the room and not embarrass them further. Min, with his hand very sore, asks what happened to Kin. The lady begins to explain that something went wrong at the company and that the police surrounded the place. Very nervous and in pain, Min says he has some friends in the police and suggests that he and the lady should go to her daughter's company to understand what's going on. At the company, a very angry woman with pustules on her face is saying that the owner of the company will be arrested. Keenan's wife, maintains a firm posture while listening to the woman speak. The woman complains to Keenan about using a cream that, according to her, caused the eruptions on her skin. Win also mentions that he has many friends in the police station, including the chief of police, a personal colleague. The woman scorns Min and comments that she knows the police director and that her cousin is the city mayor. Everyone is shocked by this information because someone so influential could complicate the situation greatly. Very frightened, shows his cowardice, saying he can't do anything and blaming Keenan's company for the problem. Someone is heard calling for the mayor's family and it's Keenan who asks for 10 minutes to try to help. With great confidence, he says that if he manages to cure the woman and restore her skin to its original state in just 10 minutes, she should leave them alone. Keenan is very surprised because it's the first time she's seen her husband speak in a long time. Very jealous of Kin's confidence in contrast to his own cowardice, Min becomes even more nervous and states that Keenan is a disgrace to the family. Chu, Keenan's wife, asks what he's doing, saying she's tired of the situation and doesn't want him to cause more problems for her company. Kami turns to his wife and reassures her, saying that now things are different and that he must fulfill his role as a husband occasionally. Min, still green with envy, starts mocking Keenan. Keenan announces in front of everyone that he has the cure for the mayor's niece's skin problems. The company employees start mocking Kinley, saying he's just an opportunist who married into a wealthy family and wondering how someone so ridiculous got involved with their boss. The woman complaining asks why she should believe him. Keenan responds that if he fails to cure her, he will take all the consequences. She agrees to test the treatment but warns that she will be relentless if it doesn't work. Keenan's wife asks him to stop because this could cause more problems. Keenan holds her hand to convey confidence and asks her to find some traditional Chinese medicine herbs. He also explains that the woman's high internal temperature might be causing the problem and that perhaps the treatment will work. Despite her doubts, his wife decides to fetch what her husband requested. Min starts cursing, saying that Kinley will get into big trouble because of this. The protagonist turns to Min and says that if he manages to cure her, he will take responsibility himself, which makes Min even more indignant, feeling belittled by Keenan's husband. The owner of the company returns with all the requested items but warns that if something goes wrong, the Chu family will not get involved, especially in anything related to the family's son-in-law. Even so, Keenan takes the ingredients. Hwa uses his power to heat the water with energy and prepares the mixture. He is no longer the mute man from before, as he now speaks and demonstrates the ability to do many things. With a satisfied expression, Kin announces that the bomb is ready. He approaches the girl with a smile on his face and asks if he can apply the solution to the eruptions to try to improve them. The problem is that the mixture has a grotesque appearance, provoking laughter among the employees. The mayor's niece, suspicious but determined, pinches her nose and begins to apply the solution to her face, although only in a small amount. Kinley, smiling, rushes to apply more of the mixture, which visibly irritates the girl. She runs to the bathroom as if she is about to vomit. Min and other employees begin mocking Keenan, calling him crazy. Meanwhile, his wife still harbors doubts, wondering if it will actually work. Suddenly, a scream is heard from the women's bathroom. Everyone pays attention, and when the girl comes out, her face is completely clean, as if by a miracle. There is no sign of eruptions, and her skin is smooth. Those who underestimated Kin are left speechless, unable to believe what they are seeing. Keenan explains that the problem was not the product, but the woman's internal body temperature, which only needed anti-inflammatory and antipyretic treatment for the wounds to disappear. The employees are still incredulous, surprised that someone so underestimated managed to cure the condition. His wife, astonished, asks how he did it. The mayor's niece mentions that her uncle has a very serious illness and offers to pay Keenan $500,000 if he can cure him. Keenan accepts without hesitation, leaving his wife shocked. She says he's crazy to take on such responsibility and shouldn't treat sick people since he's not a doctor. With a smile on his face, Keenan reassures her, saying there's nothing to worry about. Even so, Keenan remains concerned and warns him that her family will not help him if he causes someone's death in the process. Realizing that even his wife doesn't believe in his abilities, Quim lowers his head and begins to leave the place. His wife impatiently calls his name again. He takes a deep breath and promises that if something goes wrong, he will handle the problem himself and not cause further trouble for the Chu family. At nightfall, they arrive at the hospital in the city of Jiangshan, where Lu, the mayor, is talking to the doctor. The doctor informs him that his father's condition is critical and that surgery would be very risky. The mayor's niece, standing next to Kinley, becomes alarmed when she sees her uncle already in the hospital. Lu explains that his father's condition worsened that morning and the doctor said there's nothing more to be done. His cousin, very impressed, introduces Kinley as a specialist in Chinese medicine, suggesting that perhaps he can help. The cousin, skeptical, asks if Kimmy is really a doctor, to which Kimmy responds affirmatively. Still suspicious, Lou asks if Kimmy can show his diploma. Kinley admits that he doesn't have a degree, which horrifies the cousin. He starts arguing, stating he would never allow someone without a title to treat his father, leaving the family members shocked. The niece, devastated upon hearing this, asks Kimmy to leave. At that moment, a nurse appears at the door, shouting that the patient's vital signs are very weak and that everyone should go immediately to the room. Alarmed, they all rush to the patient's room. Lon fears losing her father and asks the doctor what is happening. The doctor responds that he tried everything. Her cousin continues to insist that Lin allow the protagonist to help, but Lou replies that he would never let someone without a medical license treat his father. The machine shows that the patient's vital signs are getting weaker. Kin claims he can save him but needs to act immediately. Without wasting time, Lin shouts at him to get out of there. Kinley then proposes a bet to Mayor Lou, but the latter retorts that he's not interested and asks what he could possibly gain by betting with someone like him. The bet is simple. If Kim saves the patient, he only wants an apology. Otherwise, he will go to jail. Both cousins demand that Kimmy leave the room, accusing him of being crazy for saying such things. Kimmy assures them they will regret it. Leaving the room, he sees his wife in the corridor, who immediately scolds him, saying he's acting like a fool with a serious expression. She continues, saying he should go home and stop embarrassing himself. The sound of the electrocardiogram machine catches Kinley's attention as the patient's vital signs weaken further. Lou asks what is happening to his father, but even the doctors cannot understand. The doctor orders the nurse to run and fetch a pacemaker as the machine indicates the father's heart has stopped. The doctor states there's nothing more to be done. With sadness, he expresses his condolences. Lou, incredulous, kneels by his father, crying and lamenting that he didn't take better care of him or spend more time with him. Suddenly, the door bursts open, grabbing everyone's attention. Kinley enters, determined to save the patient, and asks everyone to step aside, affirming there's still a chance to save him. He pulls out several thin needles from his coat. 10 years ago, these techniques were taught to Kim by an immortal being. He begins to touch the dead man's chest, emanating intense energy to use the technique. Now it makes sense why he remained silent for 10 years. Everything led to this moment. Kim starts inserting the energy-charged needles into the patient's chest. Before inserting the last one, he reflects that the 10 years of patience paid off. Upon inserting the last needle into the patient's neck, something surprising happened. The man began to bleed, but came back to life. The entire family celebrated with relief as the patient woke up. The incredulous doctor asked how Kimmy had managed to achieve such a feat. Kimmy stated that he had saved the patient just in time. The elderly man, still weak, apologized to his niece for worrying her. Kimmy, with a smile, turned to leave, leaving the family in the room. Just as he was about to exit, he heard the man kneeling and calling his name. Turning back, he saw the mayor admitting he had been a man of little faith and should have trusted him earlier. Despite everything, Kimmy had saved his father. Kimmy reassured Lou, saying her father would soon be stable and recovering. The girl also apologized and promised to transfer the promised $500,000, asking him to send the account number. As he closed the door and left the room, Kimmy once again heard his wife's voice, this time sarcastically calling him, "Wonderful Dr. Kin." He hadn't noticed she was there and started looking at her. Slowly, his wife began to understand what was happening. She commented that it was just a coincidence and that Kimmy should never attempt something like that again. He asked what kind of image she had of him, implying it must be a poor one. Min, Kimmy's former suitor, watched everything in nervous silence, realizing that Kimmy was doing well. The couple returned home late at night. Kimmy's mother asked her daughter how she was, if she was still scared, and what had happened. Kimmy observed the conversation between the two, as Keenan replied that everything was fine now and that it was over. The mother-in-law, surprised by her daughter's calm tone, turned to Kimmy and began yelling, sarcastically ordering him to clean the house. He agreed. After finishing the housework, Kimmy returned to the bedroom and was surprised to find his wife wearing only a nightgown, stretching in poses inspired by a TV class. He realized Keenan seemed to be practicing yoga. While stretching, she commented that she heard from her sister that he had behaved like a pervert that day. Kim explained that after picking her sister up from university, he was changing in his room when she accidentally opened the door and saw him. As Kimmy watched Keenan stretch in the thin nightgown, she adjusted the fabric near her chest, capturing his attention. Keenan continued, saying she knew her sister's temperament and believed he hadn't done anything to bother her. She also advised him to be less impulsive and thanked him for everything that went right that day. Something rare to hear. Before finishing, she warned him that the next day they would have a family meeting and had to attend the dinner. At dawn, the facade of a luxurious building called the Royal Hotel appeared. Inside the hotel, at the restaurant, Keenan's entire family gathered for the first annual Chu family reunion. They greeted each other one by one. Keenan's father, Keenan, was delighted to welcome everyone. Keenan's aunt, elegantly dressed, began speaking disdainfully, asking when Keenan would have a child. She replied that they were not ready yet and shouldn't rush. The aunt commented that having children while young was a good thing, simultaneously taking a jab by saying that, unlike some people, her son-in-law didn't need to be financially supported by his wife. Mrs. Chu smiled and commented that her son-in-law was no ordinary man and that she was very happy because he had a government job. Meanwhile, Kimmy continued savoring the banquet at the table. The aunt lightly coughed to draw attention, and Shen, another son-in-law, stood up to make a speech. He thanked the opportunity to be at the reunion and presented a gift for the uncle. A beautiful red box containing a piece of porcelain from the Yen dynasty, purchased for $30,000. Keenan's father was impressed with the gift, considering it extremely valuable. However, Kimmy felt an ominous energy emanating from the piece and suspected it might be cursed. While Keenan's in-laws praised Shin's generosity, Kimmy could barely hide his unease. Shin seized the moment to ridicule Kimmy, suggesting he should have prepared an equally grand gift. He then provocatively mentioned that Kimmy was unemployed and financially dependent on his wife. This made his wife nervous, and she said no one could speak to her husband that way. Shin continued mocking Kimmy, who stood up and explained that he was in a hurry and couldn't bring anything. Shin was surprised to hear Kimmy speak, and Shin's wife commented that even when he spoke, he was still useless and incapable of doing anything. With his usual wit, Kimmy responded that regardless of what he brought, it would be more valuable than something fake. Tension filled the room, and the aunt began cursing. Shin confidently claimed he had spent a lot of money on the piece. Kimmy countered that no matter how much he spent, the piece was still a forgery. Shin, visibly nervous, slammed the table, spilling his glass, while thinking about how anyone could have discovered this, as the seller had guaranteed the porcelain's authenticity. Challenged, Kimmy offered to prove the piece was fake. The father-in-law asked him to remain silent, and his wife scolded him, saying he was being rude since everyone there was family. The aunt kept provoking Kimmy, claiming he had made a baseless accusation. Kimmy asked if Shin would admit the porcelain was a replica, but his wife intervened, saying, it didn't matter since it was a gesture of gratitude and the family dinner shouldn't end in a fight. Suddenly, the door opened, and the mayor entered the room, asking what, exactly, was fake. He was accompanied by Femme Mal. Shen was surprised by the mayor's presence and approached to greet him. The mayor raised his hand as if to shake Shin's but ignored him and greeted Kimmy enthusiastically, showing himself happy and grateful to see him. He commented that he hadn't expected to find him there. They were merely discussing the authenticity of a porcelain piece. The mayor, upon receiving the item, calls the expert accompanying him to evaluate it. The evaluator, a specialist in blue and white ceramics, examines the object thoroughly. After a meticulous analysis, he states that the design and colors appear to be from the Wan dynasty, which relieves Shin, who spent a fortune on the piece. However, he asks if the evaluator believes it to be original or just a copy. Kimmy, noticing the hesitation, questions whether the object is truly fake. The evaluator laughs, gives him a friendly pat on the shoulder, and says he understands why the mayor likes him so much. He explains that the piece is indeed a forgery. Despite looking authentic from afar, it lacks the elegance and sophistication of an original item. Furthermore, he mentions that the porcelain had been buried with someone, absorbing a lot of negative energy, which made it cursed. Kimley's mother-in-law, desperate, asks her husband to wash his hands immediately, while the aunt scolds Shannon, who apologizes, saying he didn't know. The evaluator praises the quality of the imitation, but emphasizes that an experienced eye can spot the forgery. He invites the mayor for tea, closing the matter. Before leaving, the mayor calls Kimmy a guest of honor and mentions he has something important to discuss with him. Kimmy informs his wife's family that they should continue the dinner, promising to return as soon as he finishes his meeting with the mayor. The aunt, changing her tone, comments that Kinley is truly a good match, while the mother-in-law smiles but chooses to remain silent to keep up appearances. Kim continues the conversation with the mayor, who mentions that his father, since returning home, has been ill again in recent months, and his wife and son have also fallen sick. Upon hearing this, Kimmy focuses his energy and asks to examine the mayor's pulse. The mayor extends his hand, and as expected, a malignant energy is dissipated by Kim's energy. The mayor asks what he is feeling, but Kim reassures him, saying he knows exactly what to do and will go to the mayor's house after dinner to resolve this once and for all. The mayor feels relieved to hear this and says he will wait for him all day. At the end of the meeting, Kim accompanies his father-in-law to the car and tells his wife and sister-in-law to go ahead with him, as he needs to leave. Upon hearing this, his wife responds rudely. Everyone leaves in the car, and Kim picks up his phone, setting the GPS to trace the route to the mayor's house, which is nearby. He turns right onto a busy street and follows an alley he needs to take to reach the destination. The GPS voice indicates only 50 meters remain, but on the way, men and several armed henchmen await him. Kim observes the alley and notices the impressive number of henchmen posted there, blocking the path with weapons in hand. Min, the former suitor of his wife, appears with a mocking tone, saying the only way for Kim to leave is by letting them cut off his hands. Calmly and clearly, Kim asks if he is talking to Min. The man, with a malicious expression and threatening gaze, responds that Kim doesn't need to worry because they will handle everything. To motivate his men, Min shouts he will pay $50,000 to whoever cuts off Kim's hands. With the shout, the armed henchmen rush to attack him. With a confident smile, Kim focuses his energy, and a powerful aura begins to surround him. He delivers devastating blows, taking down the first henchman with a single kick. Then, he turns to another, striking hard in the stomach and knocking him to the ground. His movements are swift and precise as he continues to defeat his opponents one by one. After some time, showing no signs of fatigue, Kim asks if that was all. Min's face is distorted in shock. He cannot believe what he is seeing. How could someone once considered useless now be so strong? Panicked, Min tries to process what happened. Kim makes a provocative gesture, inviting him to fight, but Min chooses another option. He starts running for his life, shouting for Kim not to come near him. With everything resolved, Kim breathes and continues on his way to the mayor's house, which is in the same direction as the alley. The henchmen are defeated, lying unconscious on the ground. As the day ends and the sunset paints the sky, Kim finally reaches the mayor's house, a grand mansion. He rings the doorbell and waits a moment before being received. Upon entering, Kim feels an extremely negative energy emanating from the place. When the mayor opens the door, although he appears happy, his deep dark circles reveal his exhaustion. The mayor invites him in, but Kim notices the energy in the house is incredibly dense, much worse than he could have imagined. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes from inside the house. The two men run down the hallway, and the mayor opens a door, worried about his wife. He asks if his son Zia is getting worse again. While the mayor helps his terrified wife, Kim observes the boy Zia floating in the air, his eyes completely fixed on the malignant energy emitting a sound similar to a rattlesnake. The energy is so intense that it takes on a corporeal form. The mayor is terrified but tries to reassure them, vowing to save the boy. The monster, noticing Kim's power, begins to stir. Its eyes shine with rage, and the entity starts speaking through the boy, warning, not confronting it and leaving it alone, repeating the same phrase macably. But Kim, full of determination, prepares to act. With a quick movement, he throws several acupuncture needles charged with energy that hit not the boy but the center of the evil energy. It emits a white flash when struck and begins to dissipate. The mayor and his wife are worried about their son, who falls onto the bed very tired. Kim tells them not to approach because the energy is still inside the boy's body, and he needs to remove it to purify him. The mayor and his wife start to get very nervous and, influenced by the energy, begin to insult each other. The wife calls Kim garbage, and the mayor tells everyone to be quiet when he realizes they too are contaminated by the energy. Kim makes a small puncture in his thumb, concentrates all his energy, and places a needle on the boy's forehead. The boy begins to scream as a dark energy starts to rise into the air, taking on a very strange form. We can see it is pure dark energy. Kim's energy passes through the boy's body, which begins to float again as two energies come into play. One enters and purifies while the other exits, the evil energy accumulating above the bed. Kim charges 3 needles with energy and throws them at the black mask to disperse it. He tells the mayor not to worry anymore and that now he just needs to find the source of this sinister aura. However, the mayor does not fully understand what he means by aura. Kim starts investigating the room, asking if anything recent happened to the family or if they received any gifts. Realizing there is nothing in the room emitting this energy, he concludes that the source must be at the front of the house. He heads to the front of the house with the mayor following. Upon reaching the main door, Kim sees that inside a statue there is a small stone charged with evil energy. He takes the stone from the statue and shows it to the mayor, saying that this is the source of all the problems. However, the mayor does not believe that a simple little stone can affect them this way. Kim explains that the stone's evil aura always comes into contact with them as they enter and leave the house. The more contact they have with this evil energy, the more contaminated they become, growing increasingly irritable and weak. The mayor's wife thanks Kim for saving the child and apologizes for what she said earlier about him. Kim doesn't mind. He only wants the child to be well. The mayor is very pleased and says he will ask the driver to take Kim home, but first he surprises Kim with a proposal. Would he like to open a clinic? Kim begins to think about how opening a medical clinic could be. The mayor says he wants to repay the favor since Kim saved several members of his family. Kim thanks the mayor and starts heading toward the car, very happy with the idea. During the journey home, night begins to fall and Kim thinks that with a clinic he could help many more people. If his parents could see what he is doing now, they would be very proud of him. As he walks through the city center, Kim observes the streetlights and something catches his attention so much that he shouts for the driver to stop the car. The request is so sudden that the driver brakes abruptly and someone ends up hitting their face on the front seat. A little irritated, the driver asks if they have arrived at their destination. Kim turns around and sees his wife but doesn't understand what she is doing there so late. He hides, observing what she is doing, which catches the driver's attention. The driver notices that the young man is looking at a woman and comments that she is very beautiful. We then see another woman in high heels wearing a very tight leather outfit that attracts the attention of several people. This person is Kim's best friend and perhaps the young man is exaggerating by thinking she might be doing something wrong. Kim and his friend finally meet and the red-haired woman apologizes for being late. As she approaches, they kiss passionately. After kissing her, Kim feels very embarrassed but the red-haired woman doesn't notice. Kim's jaw drops as he sees what is happening and the driver is very surprised. He cannot understand the situation. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.